Welcome, mortals, to the Beautiful Dead podcast. If you've come to this channel, you should stay for several reasons. One, you love vampires. This is a vampire podcast where we break down movies, TV shows, and books about vampires. We talk about the universe that's been created, how are they made, what rules do they have to follow, and more. Every once in a while, like October, I set aside the fiction and talk about all things vampire. 2, you have a podcast or would like to have a podcast and want to see behind the scenes of recording one. I edit out very little, so you will get to see mistakes and interruptions and learn along with me. Or 3, you're a fan of the podcast and you just want to watch me record it live. Or you like my books and you can't get enough of me. So, if you're still here, I promise it's due to your own free will, and I have not used my powers to keep you here. Now, watch the title cards and listen to the music along with the podcast. I'm gonna go get a bite, and I'll meet you back here, nice and full.
Hello? Really?
Vampire! We take your candy!
Count Dracula.
I am Dracula. And I bid you welcome, Mr. Hunt, to my house. Come in.
Our first award goes to the vampires for most blood drained in a single evening.
The strength of the vampire is that people will not believe in him.
Good evening, my fellow vampire lovers. The sun is going down, and you know what that means. It's time for me to record another episode of my podcast, The Beautiful Dead. As always, I'm your host, Lena. If you go to lenanazeri.com, you can find links to my social media, a contact form, or you can just email me. That's lena@lenanazeri.com. I try to respond to all comments on my videos and posts, any emails. So if you haven't heard from me and it's been more than 3 or 4 days, please send it again. It's probably lost somewhere. I have so much going on right now. Speaking of a lot going on, if you haven't already, go to TikTok. That's at Beautiful Dead Podcast, where I am reading the first book, Bite Shift. Every day you get a new chapter. I'm trying to go live about every week, so see if you can catch me on a live. Follow me if you haven't. It's a great way to enjoy Bite Shift, even if you've already read it, to hear the author read it the way that I hear it in my head. And then you can laugh at my terrible accents because, oh my gosh, I don't even know why I started the accents. I should have just read it straight out, but nope, I had to try and do accents, and now I've read myself into a corner. So behind the scenes, this is the first time, this is not the first time. This is the third time I've tried to record this intro because I don't know what's gotten into Juliet, but she is extra annoying today. So she's had her treat, which she ate noisily and sloppily, and then she was sniffing around and scratching at the door. So the door is now open. So you might hear the clickety clicks of Juliet's nails as she decides what she wants to do. I finally just gave up and opened the door. And now I'm distracted. Oh, Reese. Reese will be out May 2024. I don't have a release date yet. Join my Fanged family. You'll get an alert the second I know the release date. As soon as you can pre-order, that's going to be posted on my social media. Do not wait to hear it on here. And that is because I am taking a break in May. I know it's kind of unexpected. I just decided last week I really need a break. I have so much to do to get this book out. I have stuff happening with friends and family. I'm working 2 jobs. I'm also feeling I'm really feeling the fact that I only have so much more time with my kids before they are going to go start their own lives. So I'm pumping the brakes in May. My tarot for May, in case you're wondering, is the Two of, I think it was the Two of Pentacles, or the Two of Cups. But basically, it's a card all about balance, finding balance. You know, having some difficult conversations, making some difficult choices that will bring about balance and ensure that your future is what you want it to be and has more balance and has more peace. And so I'm taking a break. I will be back in June though, okay? So please comment or send me a message to tell me, what would you like me to review in June? I have no plans for June right now. I can't even think that far ahead because so much is happening. So please just let me know what you would like to see me cover. Please remember, if you only know me from YouTube, that this podcast was on for 3 years prior to YouTube. So you can always go listen to me on Spotify or Apple Podcasts if you want to know if I've already covered something or not. If I only did the audio version and it was a while ago, I have no problem doing it again for YouTube, but you guys need to speak up and tell me what you want me to do, okay? Stop putting it all on me. Tell me what you want me to cover. All right, is that everything? May. I'll be at Fan Expo Philly the first weekend of May. That's another reason I need to take like a little bit of a breather. All the books are packed and ready to go. I will not have Reese there. There's no way. But I have the other 3. I have bins and bins and bins full, and I'm ready to go. So, all right, guys. If you only know me from the podcast and you don't plan on engaging with me in any other way, then I will see you in June. It's completely up to you. Let's talk about Dracula 2020. We're going to end our Dracula month. My vampire tea this evening is Sunrise Sensation. It's a white tea with lemon and ginseng and ginger root. It's very like, I've been fighting whatever is in the air right now, like congestion and stuff. It's the perfect tea for that. It is feeling very good on the sinuses, I will tell you, and on the throat. So let's talk about Dracula 2020. This was a Netflix original in coordination with BBC, and it was done in 3 parts. So it's a mini-series. It's done in 3 parts. It's an hour and a half each part. If you are new to this, massive spoiler alert, I'm going to tell you everything. So if you have no intention of watching it, great. If you've already seen it, great. But if you want to watch it first and you don't want it ruined, please pause the podcast, go watch it, and then come back. And I'm seeing now that I'm out of focus, and I don't know why. I don't know what's going on with my camera. It's been going out of focus a lot, and it's not supposed to do that. I don't know. Just one more thing to worry about. Okay, Dracula 2020. So I'm going to read you the summary for the 3 parts. Part 1. Jonathan Harker travels to Count Dracula's castle in Transylvania to assist with a property purchase in England. We all know this. During Harker's stay, Dracula feeds on his blood and becomes youthful, while Jonathan becomes increasingly weak. Harker searches the castle and discovers various undead, all of whom were bitten by Dracula. Some retain some of their humanity, and Dracula describes them as his brides. Dracula kills Harker, who immediately revives and throws himself into the river. Sometime later, Harker is found in the sea and taken to a convent, but his memories are impaired. He's questioned by Sister Agatha Van Helsing, accompanied by his fiancée Mina. After almost attacking Mina, Harker tries to kill himself with a stake. Dracula, drawn by Harker's presence, arrives at the convent but is unable to enter without invitation. After a verbal confrontation with Van Helsing, Dracula finds Harker, who is still undead, and addresses him through an open window. Explaining that the undead cannot kill themselves, he promises to end Harker's existence in return for an invitation inside. Harker agrees and Dracula enters, killing all of the nuns except Van Helsing and Mina, who he corners in a basement. That is part 1. All right, part 2. Dracula is a passenger on the Demeter, which has been chartered to sail to England by a mysterious figure named Balar. It carries other passengers, all of whom have a connection to Balar, and cargo, which contains boxes of soils from Transylvania. Dracula begins to kill passengers and crew, acquiring their memories and traits. It transpires that Dracula is Bilar and carefully selected his fellow passengers to prepare for his entrance into English society. The surviving passengers and crews search for the killer and discover an emaciated Agatha Van Helsing in one of the cabins. Dracula, who's been slowly draining her during their voyage, attempts to blame Agatha for the killings, but she convinces the others that Dracula is the vampire. After the surviving humans manage to set him on fire, Dracula throws himself into the sea. As the ship approaches Whitby, Dracula, who's been hiding on the ship, miraculously reemerges. Agatha distracts him while the captain uses gunpowder to blow up the ship and prevent the vampire from reaching the shore. Dracula, however, manages to seal himself inside a coffin filled with his native soil as the ship sinks. That is part 2. And if it sounds a little bit like the last voyage of the Demeter, I know. I thought it was so clever when I saw the last voyage of the Demeter, but now that I've seen the second part of this miniseries, I was like, Anywho, it's okay. And part 3. Dracula emerges from his coffin and surfaces on Whitby Beach. He's met by Dr. Zoe Van Helsing, who tells him that 123 years have passed. He tries to feed on her, but her blood makes him vomit. He's imprisoned in a laboratory for study, and his blood is sampled. However, he contacts the lawyer, who threatens to expose their legal operations, and is released. Zoe drinks Dracula's blood and begins to experience Sister Agatha's memories. Dracula becomes infatuated by Lucy Westenra, a young socialite who does not fear him and plans to make her his bride. Zoe, dying of cancer, begins to merge with Agatha's personality. Zoe travels to Dracula's London home. Lucy, now undead, also arrives but is horrified at what she has become and is killed at her own request. Zoe exposes Dracula to the sunlight, but he's unaffected. Zoe explains that Dracula fears death above all and is greatly ashamed of this. He has conditioned himself to believe all the legends that allow him to hide himself from society because he feels unworthy. Zoe dies and Dracula drinks her poisoned blood, and the two share an epiphany in the sunlight. Okay, so we're going to talk about this. But I just finished it, and I had so much happening that I like literally jumped in the shower, put on the bare minimum of makeup, and jumped in front of this camera because I have so much to talk about. So let's get to it. Let's talk about it. Vampire crossovers. We actually did have 2. Jonathan Aris, who plays the captain of the Demeter, is in an episode of Being Human. And then Sasha Dhawan was Dr. Sharma in this, and also in an episode of Being Human, the BBC version. So tiny little vampire crossovers, but we had a couple. As far as references, I mean, we did get to hear our line, I never drink wine. He actually mentions it a couple times. Now guys, because I don't have this on DVD, it was on Netflix, I am unable to screen record. Netflix, Prime, all of them, like if you try to screen record, it just comes out black. So I will be posting pictures along with this. We're gonna go back to the way I used to do it, but I promise anytime I can from now on, I'll do the screen records because you guys really seem to enjoy that. But as of right now, the only way I know to do that is to have it on DVD, and I don't have this one, so bear with me. Relationship to humans. Okay, so the humans know of vampires because he says I'm a vampire, and people know what that is. But in this world, they don't know that Count Dracula is a vampire. So now, Sister Agatha, as we know, is a descendant of Van Helsing. Sister Agatha has been studying what people say about Count Dracula, but when she sees him in the convent, that's the first time she actually meets him, but she has heard of him. But as far as I can tell, she's the only one, because nobody's like, well, you know that Count Dracula's a vampire. It's not until he reveals himself that they know this. Okay. He feeds on humans. Some he turns into human servants like Renfield, which is his attorney in the third part. And then a few, like Sister Agatha, are actively studying vampires and then hunting Count Dracula. Relationship to animals. Dracula can control bats and wolves, and we do see that they can feed on animals because he feeds one of his brides rats and things like that. Now we're going to talk a little more about the brides later on because it might not be exactly what you're thinking. Appearance. When we first meet him, he looks extremely old. I will try and find a picture. Then as he proceeds to feed on Jonathan, over the next few days, he gets younger and younger and younger. The whole time, he has these sharp white nails. Other than that, he looks human until he vamps out. And when he vamps out, he has red around his irises, almost like they're bleeding. And then, of course, fangs. Now, I will definitely try and find a picture of the fangs because, yes, he has the 2 elongated canines, but all of his teeth get sharpened in some way. Like some have 2 points, some has 1 point. The 2 canines are the longest, but they all change when he fangs out. So I will try and find a picture of that. I know that's not a great description, so hopefully I can find a picture. Blood. Okay, so this was a really good use of blood in a Dracula story. Yes, Dracula feeds on blood. All the vampires do. But Dracula can actually, he says, I'm going to absorb you. And that's what he does. He feeds on people, and from feeding on them, he knows all of their knowledge, their memories. He learns languages that way. We see him feed on a crew member and then suddenly speak fluent German. He is feeding on Jonathan. So when we first meet him, he's old and he has a very thick Eastern European accent. And then in a couple days, not only is he young, but he has a British accent. And I just thought that was what a great way to show the way he like literally absorbs your personality. And then as explained, he feeds off Agatha, and then a century later, Zoe drinks Dracula's blood and gets Agatha's memories. So very, very interesting use of blood. And he has collected the people that he did on the Demeter specifically to gather all of their knowledge so that when he walked into England, he would just fit right in because he would know exactly how to act. And then when he arrives, 123 years later, he's able to absorb the knowledge of technology and science and all of these things just by feeding on modern people. Very handy. Food. He doesn't eat. The garlic thing is never addressed. It doesn't even matter. We don't even need to know that. Sunlight. So until the very, very end, he avoids the sun, and he says to Jonathan, like, tell me what she looks like, because if I step into it, I'll be burnt to ash. But in the very end, it's revealed that him being exposed to the sun does nothing. Nothing. So all of that fear, all of that belief for nothing. Sleep. He sleeps in a coffin or a crate with his Transylvanian soil, and the way that he's able to survive the sinking of the Demeter is he climbs into a crate of soil which drops to the bottom of the ocean, and then he just sort of goes into a coma and he just stays there for 123 years. Holy items. He does have an aversion to the cross, and we're going to talk about why at the end. I don't know what Juliet is doing. I'm so sorry if you can hear those sounds in the background. I don't know what has gotten into her today. Rules. Okay, so he does need to be invited in. He does not look into mirrors, but that is not because he can't see his reflection. We find out later is because he doesn't want to look at himself. When he does look into a mirror, he sees this old, withered, monstrous version of himself. Now, when Lucy comes back, she sees the opposite. She sees herself as beautiful, even though that is not true, and we will talk about that. And we talked about the soil bit. I have to sleep on the soil in my homeland. Powers. He has heightened senses. He can scale walls, turn to smoke, controls the weather and fog. He's strong, fast, he's immortal. We talked about how he can absorb you through your blood, which I think is like just so handy. He could turn into a wolf, but we also see him turn into Harker. He looks exactly like Harker, and then he like peels the skin off just like he did with the wolf. If he had mind control, I think we would have seen that in the 3 episodes, but doesn't matter because this Dracula is extremely powerful and he has every skill he needs. Heartbeat or breathing? This is actually addressed, and the answer is no. And we see Dracula walk along the bottom of the ocean, which I guess is something you could do if you didn't have to breathe. And he's been down there 120 years, so clearly he doesn't need oxygen. So yeah, no heartbeat or breathing. We're going to skip to how they die because how they're made is very convoluted. So let's start with how do they die. So a stake to the heart kills a bride and a vampire child. Jonathan tries to stake himself, and then Dracula explains, suicide doesn't work. Don't you think that the undead have tried this over the centuries? You have to be staked by somebody else. Lucy is staked and she turns to ash, which the others don't. But I think it's because Lucy's already like 75% burned. She gets put in her coffin, gets put in the crematorium, and pretty far along burned before she manages to get out. So I think that's why she turns to ash. We don't see Dracula ever staked, so we don't know if it would have worked on him. Ultimately, he dies because he drinks the blood of a dying person. So he drinks from Agatha, who is dying of cancer, and he explains that the blood of the dying is poison to vampires. All right, how are they made? Oh boy, okay, so bear with me for a minute. We never find out how Dracula was made into a vampire, so just so you know. So we're going to start with Dracula as the originator. So Dracula bites a lot of people. He feeds from a lot of people. Now, he explains that some just die. Others turn into these like undead zombie creatures that are more animal than man. All they care about is their hunger. These he like nails into crates and just sticks into a room upstairs, which kind of reminds me of The Hunger. So all these crates are just full of these things, and we're going to call them ghouls. So they're ghouls, but then sometimes he feeds and that person rises and still is sentient, and they have a personality, and yes, they have the hunger, but they also are able to engage in conversation. So he does not know why some die, some are ghouls, and some are what he calls brides. So he even refers to Harker as a bride. So for him, a bride is a vampire he has made that is almost like him. Now, none of them are like him. None of them are that powerful. But there are a few that rise and seem to maintain their individuality. At one point in time, he feeds a baby to a bride, and the baby rises as a vampire, and he's like, never seen it work on a baby. Maybe I'll keep it just for funsies. So he is treating all of this like just a big science experiment. He's just like curious about why it works on some and not others. He says he's trying to procreate, but I don't think that means that he wants to like put a baby in your belly. I think that means I'm just going to keep feeding and feeding and feeding until I figure out why do some work and some don't. And Lucy, he says, is the best bride he's had in 500 years. However, because she's thrown in the crematorium, she wasn't going to last very long. But he does say like she was the most promising bride in 500 years. If you want more of an explanation as to why, I don't have it for you, because not even Dracula understands. He's just out there like doing it to as many people as possible and just seeing like who turns, who doesn't, and all that stuff. Did I get to everything? I looked away from my notes because I'm telling you, I just got done watching it and I'm so excited to talk about it. At one point in time, he goes out to a graveyard. He takes Lucy out there and he's like, there are 9 in the ground that I can hear that are still alive. So these are people he fed on. They came back as ghouls and they're just like scratching at their coffins. And then there's a little one, and the little one is out. And he says sometimes the little ones can wiggle their way out. Now, he does eventually stake this child, but yeah. Are they good or are they bad? 100% the vampires are the bad guys. I can't even argue that one. Even Dracula, he's the bad guy. I can't. There's no point in even trying to put a spin on this. The vampires are the bad guys. Tropes I love and tropes I hate. All right. We have it. We have my favorite cheeseball trope. Harker cuts his finger on a mirror, and Dracula, reacts. Cheesy. I love the trope of bringing an ancient vampire into the modern world. We see it with Dracula 2000. We see it with Queen of the Damned. I love the idea of an ancient vamp somehow is like suddenly awakened today in our world. Oh, and I love a good wolf into man transformation. It's why I watch werewolf movies, and this transformation is very well done. If you just want to see the transformation, go towards like the last 20 minutes of part 1, and you'll get to see him transform. Tropes I hate. So I don't want to jump ahead, so I'm going to save the trope I hate for my thoughts, because if I tell you now, it's gonna ruin my whole stream of thoughts. So we're going to skip ahead. And we're going to skip ahead to the ratings. And we're also going to do this one out of order. We are going to start with how sexy or alluring is the Dracula in 2020 in Netflix's Dracula. All right. The only time you see Dracula engaged in sexy time. I'm so sorry about my camera consistently going out of focus here. So sorry, guys. I even set it to focus on faces. Maybe it's my lighting. The only time we see Dracula engaged in adult bedroom activities is when he sends the person he's feeding on into a dream, and we do see that. And we see that at the end with Agatha, where he is feeding on her and sends her into a dream of the two of them engaged in flagrato. And we know also that Lucy lets him feed on her, but I don't think it's because he has some kind of special allure. I think it's because she, for whatever reason, just loves the idea of dying or flirting with death. She just is attracted to the darkness that is around us, and that's why she's so into Dracula. It's not because they're enthralled by him. As a matter of fact, they all seem kind of horrified around him. So I will tell you, he gets a point for being a vampire. He gets a point for the way that he looks once he's fed. Very, very handsome man. That's it. 2 out of 10 onks for sexiness and allure. I don't think this Dracula wants you. And if he does want you, that's a bad thing. You do not want him to want you. Trust me. You want to be not noticed by him at all. Okay. So 2 out of 10. And no offense to the guy who plays Dracula, very handsome, but the character is not something that I would want to go to bed with. All right. How scary or evil is the Dracula from Netflix's Dracula in 2020? I do not give this score lightly. I gave him a 9.5 out of 10. That might be the highest I've ever given. I have to go back and look at the Vampires of 30 Days of Night, but I think even they were lower because they are bound by the sun. But this is, let me just tell you, let's break it down, okay? He is the only one like him, okay? He is one of a kind. He is the master to all vampires. He has killed so many people. Not always just because he needs to feed, but just because he's kind of curious about how the whole vampire thing works. So humans to him are like labs in a science, like lab rats in a science experiment. He will wipe out, he wiped out an entire convent full of nuns. Doubt he's gonna lose any sleep over that. Humans are just a way for him to gather information. They're nothing but like this experiment. He feeds a baby to his bride and then stakes the bride just to see if she'll die, to see if it'll work. He can shift into animals and he can shift into people. So yes, he needs to be invited in, but he'll just shift into somebody you know and then get you to invite him in, and then you're dead. He slaughters the nuns, like I told you. He is bound by the sun, but not really. So the only reason I took that half a point from him, the only reason he's not a perfect 10 out of 10 is because ultimately it was his own hang-ups that stood in his way. If he could have just worked that out, he would have been an unstoppable killing machine. He would have been a perfect 10 out of 10. So huge, huge, huge shout out to this version of Dracula. By far the scariest, most evil version of a vampire I think I have ever seen. So, 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 so good. All right, my thoughts. So like I said, I hit stop, jumped in the shower, slapped on some makeup, and hit record because I wanted to talk about this. I have so many thoughts in my head. I will definitely have to watch this again when I'm not reviewing it, just to soak it all in, because there is so much. I would have watched 10 more hours of this. It was that good. It was so interesting. I was so into it. I loved the way that they took the characters from the books and then kind of rearranged it to work in this new narrative. So I know I said with a previous one, I'm not sure why they made these changes. It doesn't add or subtract to the plot, but these changes do work. These changes work, and there's these homages from the book. So for example, the little vampire child calls Lucy the Blue Fur Lady, which is from the book. I love that they made their own interpretation of the material. I love that it's broken into the 3 parts. So we have Romania, the Demeter, and then England. I love the way that they did it. And I want to say that a villain is only as good as the hero and vice versa. So if either one of that equation is weak, it ruins it for the other one. So if it's a weak hero, it automatically makes the villain not that great because it's bested by a weak hero, and vice versa. So in this equation, it is very, very important that both sides are strong, and this Dracula was made even better because the antithesis to him was Sister Agatha, and she is so good. I dare say that in the first episode, she kind of stole the spotlight from Dracula. She was so good. At one point in time, they're facing each other. He's trying to get into this convent. He's just pacing back and forth. And she's like, "You're no better than a beast, because even an ox can walk through an entranceway without being invited. So how are you any better than a beast?" It was so good, the way she challenges him, the chemistry that happens between the two of them, the sarcasm, the line delivery was just, she was on fire. And because of that, it made Dracula even better because this hero was so good. There are also excellent lines in this version. The one I can think of is, he says, "I'm undead, not unreasonable." Just excellent, excellent one line, these one-liners that just shot off the TV God, that's so good. Excellent writing. Applause, applause, applause. I love that the writers took the time to explain some things because, much like me, Sister Agatha is trying to understand the vampire. She even says, when he's unable to enter into the convent, she's like, "Is it a physical barrier? Is it a mental barrier? What's happening? What are you feeling?" So she reminds me so much of myself in that, because I'm it's not enough to just say I need invited in. Why? Explain to me the why. Explain to me, why do you need invited in? And so I loved that the writers did that for us in this world. As I've said before, Dracula, if you're going to use that name, should never be boiled down to this simple, sad character. He should never be weak or love struck. He should never be, this romantic hero. It's fine if you want to present him that way, but in my opinion, if you're going to use Dracula, you need to make him powerful and strong and something to not be reckoned with. And that is what they did with this one. It was so good. He was not a heartthrob. He was not a romantic hero. He is a supernatural, inhuman, almost unstoppable predator. And that is the way that this was played. So, even in this version, he is ultimately brought down by his own choice. He chooses to die. He drinks from somebody he knows is dying to save her from suffering from a horrible, painful death. He is choosing to die. So even in this world, even as good as the hero was, it was Dracula who chose to be done. So this is going to bring me to the trope that I don't like. The one that I said, hold on, I don't want to talk about it yet. I do not like the trope, the answer was inside of you all the time. I hate that trope. So, in my personal opinion, I thought the ending was weak. In this version, Dracula is brought down by his own fear of himself. So, let me explain. He has believed the legends for so long that he's now internalized them and they have become real to him, which I think is a powerful statement, right? Because we want to make sure that we're not always listening to what everyone else says about us. But Dracula will not face a mirror because he does not want to face himself. He ultimately is afraid of dying. So I don't know if he became a vampire because he self-actualized his own fear of dying and cannot die, but his own fear of dying has filled him with such shame because his father, his grandfather, his uncles, his brothers, they all died on a battlefield. And the fact that he's afraid to die is something he's deeply ashamed of. Because of this, he doesn't want to face his own reflection. He wants to remain in the shadows. He does not want to be seen clearly in the sunlight, and he needs to be invited in. All of this because of his own deep-rooted shame of himself and his fear. So ultimately, he stands in the sun. There's a moment where he's standing in the sun and he's like, Agatha, it's so beautiful. And then he lets her like die in a dream. That's a beautiful dream, and chooses to die himself by drinking her blood so that he can send her into this beautiful dream. I don't know if it's gratitude because she's finally like seen him or recognized this in him or helped him get over it. I don't know, but in my own personal opinion, I thought that it was, I know it's supposed to be beautiful, but I thought it was just cheesy. And so all of the amazing material leading up to it, I felt like this was a plummet down at the end. I wish that I had not watched the last couple minutes. I wish that I had stopped and then just imagine sort of like a big confrontation between the two of them. I think it would have been a little more satisfying for me personally. It's my own personal opinion. I just want to say that. That being said, please do not misconstrue what I'm saying. I loved this Dracula. I will absolutely be watching this one again. Absolutely. So where we stand at the end of our Dracula month is, I gotta say, Gary Oldman, Frank Langella, Bela Lugosi, and then this Dracula. Then this Dracula, I might even love more than Bela Lugosi. I'm so sorry. But I loved this version. Like, I'm not gonna, I just want you guys to go watch it, okay? I'm not going to tell you watch it or don't watch it. That's entirely up to you. You can agree with my thoughts on the ending or not. I absolutely loved this. I highly recommend it to everybody. I think it is an excellent way to end our Dracula month. We are ending this strong. I'm so happy with it. I feel very happy going into my mini break on this version of Dracula. I promise you I will return in June. Please let me know what you want me to cover because I want to be open to what you guys want to watch. I don't want to keep watching what I want to watch. Watch my socials for Reese coming out, for the date of my return. Let this be me living by example and doing the things that I tell everybody to do all the time, which is listen to your body, listen to your spirit, take breaks when you need to, work-life balance, take care of yourself. And that is what I am doing in May. I'm going to take care of myself, spend time with the people I love, take a little break from this, I'm not disappearing. I'm just not doing the podcast or the YouTube for just 1 month, and then I will be back in June. I truly love you guys. I thank you so, so much for joining me. For all the new people that have been subscribing, I can't tell you what this means to me. I was so close to quitting this. I was so close to just taking it off of my list forever and just being done and just saying I'm done. But I'm just taking a little break, and then I'll be back in June. So I wish you wicked hugs and bloody kisses. Good evening.